Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, big news on the Carolina basketball front, as Hubert Davis has just been unveiled as the next head basketball coach at the University of North Carolina. We're recording this around 4:30 on Monday, April 5th. The news just kind of broke about an hour or so ago that Davis was going to be the next coach for the Tar Heels. Obviously, been an assistant under Roy Williams for the last few seasons, I think going back to 2012. And now, the head basketball coach at one of the most storied programs in the country. AJ, I'm going to kick it to you very quickly because obviously you've been doing a lot of digging behind the scenes, been trying to figure out who the next guy is going to be, and have been all over that for us for the past couple of days since Roy ended up retiring. Just your overall thoughts on Davis being hired as the next guy and kind of what you've had to go through to, get that thing confirmed, because I know it was tough.
Getting stuff confirmed to how we get things confirmed has been quite a challenge since the press conference on Thursday. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we could talk about that a little bit later. My thoughts more on this specific hiring. I wrote a column we have posted already on the site about Hubert's unbelievable history in his life around basketball royalty.
It's fairy tale stuff, really. I mean, it's like Hollywood movie kind of stuff, really, when you think about it.
If you want to check all the appropriate boxes, you could check every one of them except one. He's never been a head coach. And so that makes it a little bit of a risk because he's never been a head coach. There's an unknown factor. He's a head coach of the JV team. It's not the same. However, it is coaching, teaching, directing kids that are the same age. But first of all, when he was 6 years old, he was at the Olympics in Montreal with his uncle, Walter Davis, who had hit one of the most famous shots in Carolina history in 1974 against Duke, sent the game into overtime. If you don't know about it, look it up. You can find video of it. It's grainy, but you can find it. Well, Walter was one of the greatest Tar Heels of all time. He was a big-time player in the NBA and had a really nice career. Hubert, who then went to Carolina, a little more than a decade later, was kind of an unheralded recruit. He wasn't expected to go to Carolina and do the kind of things that guys like MJ, Worthy, and Perkins did back in the day, right?
Yeah.
He was supposed to some people thought him as a legacy recruit because Dean had such a strong relationship with Walter. But he turned into a nice player. By his second year, he's averaging 9 points a game. He was up to 13, and as a senior, averaged 21 points a game, was second team all ACC. Mm-hmm. It was a first-round pick by the Knicks, the number 20 pick overall. But think about it. He played for Dean Smith, and I think it's safe to say he was a self-made player because nobody, even the 9 points a game as a sophomore, a lot of people thought, well, that would be the high end for him.
Pinnacle,
but he far exceeded people's expectations. Drafted by the Knicks, and he played for Pat Riley. If you don't know who Pat Riley is, it doesn't take long to Google and read a litany of all the things he's achieved. A lot of people think Pat Riley might be a combination, the greatest coach and executive in NBA history. Pat Riley played at Kentucky, won a title as a player with the Lakers, was an assistant on the Lakers when they won a title in '80. He won 5 as a head coach, 2 as an NBA executive. Hubert, when Riley left, Don Nelson came in. Don Nelson's a legendary Boston Celtic. His number is retired. Hubert played a year for him there, played a few years for him with the Dallas Mavericks. By the way, Don Nelson has more wins than anybody in NBA history as a coach.
Not too bad mentors right there.
Then Hubert eventually made his way to the Detroit Pistons, where he played for Larry Brown, who was one of Carolina's legends. He was one of the first great players for Dean. He always swore by Dean, always called him coach, still calls him coach. He's 80 years old, still calls him coach. Mm-hmm. Brown won an ABA title as a player, coached. He was a 3-time ABA coach of the year. He won an NBA title. He won an NCAA title with Kansas, took UCLA to the championship game. Generally considered one of the greatest coaches of all time because he's done it at all these different levels and a great mind. And someone that Dean would love to have seen maybe in the UNC job back in the day, okay? Then he spent 9 years learning under Roy Williams. Roy was an assistant under Dean for 10 years. So he's an assistant under Roy Williams, national championship in 2017, title game appearance in 16, and all that kind of stuff. He played 12 years in the NBA, scored 5,000 something points, 5,500 points, He was the second team All ACC player at Carolina, and his whole basketball life has been intertwined with UNC and basketball royalty. When you're thinking Dean Smith, Pat Riley, Larry Brown, Roy Williams, and I'm going to throw in Don Nelson along with those guys, maybe not quite their level, but certainly a notch just below, and a very impressive place where not a lot of guys have been. He's been around the greatest minds in the sport for 3 decades. And he got his first taste of Dean Smith in Carolina basketball when he was 6 years old. That's 45 years ago. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have the head coaching experience, Jacob, but his associations and life experiences otherwise have prepared him for a moment like this. It's prepared him to sit in that chair. He's not going to be in awe of it. He's not going to be overwhelmed by it. I don't know if he's going to be a good head coach or not. I really don't. I can't sit here and say this is a great hire.
Yeah.
But I understand the hire. And that's all nobody could say it's a great hire or a bad hire right now, because we've got to wait and see what he does. But it makes sense. And by the way, in 2008, he won the John Wooden Award. I can't remember what it's called, something, a legacy award. Where, he's a humanitarian. He's a great guy. He's understood and appreciated as being an unbelievably top-notch individual, family man. He checks all the boxes. And that's what my column was about. He checks literally every box you could ever want in someone that would take this position, except one. And a lot of people say, well, hey, Jay, that's the most important one. He's never been a head coach before. Yeah. He's going to be surrounded by people that know what they're doing, that have been around the program. He keeps it in the family, and we'll discuss that in a minute. So he's the guy. Whether people like it or not, he's the guy. Mm-hmm. And I totally understand why Roy wanted him and why Bubba Cunningham wanted him.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I'm going to put it like this. I put this on our message boards, which has just been going crazy for the past, since Roy announced he was retired earlier today on Monday. I think it was around noon. And I had seen a lot of the Hubert rumors, and I had seen kind of the rumors that were emerging of, it looks like Carolina's going to keep it in the family. Looks like that's the direction Carolina's going to go in. So when I think of that, I say, okay, there's 3 candidates that have been mentioned: Hubert Davis, Wes Miller, Jerry Stackhouse. Never really considered Jerry Stackhouse a legit candidate. So you're kind of coming it down to Hubert Davis, Wes Miller. Now, on paper, and this is what I put on the board, if you look at their resumes, if you were to go into a regular job interview and you would have put Hubert Davis's resume on the table and you would have put Wes Miller's resume on the table, to me, there's no way you could pick a guy like Hubert over Wes. You would choose Wes, I think, 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, if you're solely basing it on head coaching experience, resume, not to mention, like we mentioned, Wes Miller played at Carolina, has that connection. Roy Williams is his mentor, right down the road in Greensboro, has proven he could build a program. So that tells me, like you just mentioned a few minutes ago, that this was not a resume hire. This was not a hire of, okay, this guy has proven he can do it as a head coach. This was more of a hire based on Roy Williams' recommendation, based on like the things that you mentioned. It's a Hollywood story, man. It's a fairy tale story when you think about it. So to me, like I mentioned, not a resume hire. It's more of a hire that comes from recommendations from someone like Roy and comes from that Carolina connection and what he's been able to do, because there's just no way you could sit down and compare those resumes if you had to keep it in the Carolina family and that was what you had to do, and say that Hubert was a better head coaching candidate based on what he's done in the past. Now, that's my opinion on it. I'm sure some people will disagree with that, but I don't really know if you could disagree with the fact that resume-wise, Wes's was a lot more impressive and the major if is if you had to choose somebody in the Carolina family, because I think overall there was definitely better hires out there. Like Bubba mentioned, this is the best coaching job in America. I think Bubba mentioned something about wanting head coaching experience in his press conference last week after Roy announced that he retired. So whatever changed in that time period that made him and led him to believe that Hubert was the guy and the best guy for the job, that tells me it had to do a lot with Roy's recommendation, which should hold a lot of weight. I agree. Roy's a guy that's been around, legendary coach. So it definitely should hold some weight. But to me, this pick has to be 80%, 90% based on that, because you just can't really compare the resume when you consider he just doesn't have any head coaching experience at any level besides junior varsity at Carolina.
Well, the only thing Wes has over him is 10 years head coaching experience at UNC Greensboro. 9 of those years, Hubert was alongside Roy. Mm-hmm. So there's something to say for that.
Definitely.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that Roy spent 10 years on Dean's bench and then went to Kansas.
Very similar, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Took over a program that won the national title under Larry Brown, and they were on probation the first year because that kind of happened sometimes when Larry Brown got into college. And I think it worked out really well for Roy. Now, not lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place in sports, but we do make choices a lot of times based on past experiences. I will say that actually Hubert's resume is awfully impressive. He's just missing that one box. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know how I've hired people before, not just here. I hired people in other jobs I've had. And sometimes you make a hire based on gut, based on you just read somebody and think that they just have it. They may not have had certain kinds of opportunities as someone else, but but they have enough that you could read them by. Mm-hmm. And for Carolina, they've seen Hubert work up close for 10 years. Bubba's been there 10 years. So he's seen Hubert go about his job for 10 years. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. If you're applying for a job from within and they know you can do it, they may promote from within in a company.
Definitely.
Bringing someone in from the outside because they know that you know the lay of the land. You know how it works in there, and they've seen you operate your job. We don't know all of Hubert's jobs. We don't know the task that Roy has assigned. Let's say when Roy's on a recruiting trip pre-pandemic time and he says, Hubert's got to run practice. Maybe Bubba's sitting there and he's watched Hubert run those practices. Maybe Hubert has had moments where he's had meetings with the team and he takes over and Roy just kind of sits back. We don't know those things because as close as I've been to the program, I don't know 1/10 of what's probably going on, which is fine. It's the way it should be.
Exactly.
So we don't know all of what Bubba has seen. And you know who's seen most all of it is Roy. Mm-hmm. Roy loves this program. He understands what happened before when Matt Doherty, who was an assistant under him, started on the championship team in '82, played for Dean. When he got the job, it didn't work. And there are a lot of reasons why it didn't work. We're not going to go into those reasons here. But Roy understands where they were and what brought him back here the first time. So I would think that whatever the weaknesses that Matt Doherty brought to this job, he doesn't see those in Hubert. He doesn't want to see this school go back in 3 years.
No, definitely not.
So I think that the resume is very strong. It's just missing that one thing. But they've seen the guy in action. They know who he is. And life experience is really important. And, Hubert's 50, Wes is 38. Wes has not been around all the different forms of royalty that Hubert has. Mm-hmm. Hubert has listened to a couple hundred Pat Riley halftime speeches, pregame speeches, practices on the airplane, talking about preparation, talking about being at this level and staying at this level. He's heard Don Nelson do the same thing. He's heard Larry Brown do the same thing. He was a teammate of Michael Jordan's with the Wizards. I had a long interview with Hubert in 2001 in Wilmington when I was with the Star News when they had training camp there. And I remember walking away saying, man, that's one of the most impressive dudes I've ever talked to. And I saw Hubert in high school, by the way. My dad refereed some of his games in high school.
Yeah, that's pretty cool right there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're both from the same area in Northern Virginia. And by the way, at Lake Braddock High School at that time, guess who's walking the halls of Lake Braddock High School? Hubert Davis and Mia Hamm.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So, and I played at Lake Braddock's homecoming in football one year. Mm-hmm. We beat them too.
Nice.
Huge crowd. Anyway, had a big block that game. Anyway, so who's to say that Hubert experiences maybe his nose wasn't pointed in the direction of being a head coach all along, but when you start to accumulate and look back, say, holy crap, this is what I've experienced. I did that the other day with Roy retiring, and I wrote a piece where it forced me to look back in time. And I sat and talked to my wife the other day. I said, because Jacob, you know me. I'm on a plane. And you didn't know much was going on the last couple of days because I've been so busy, I haven't even talked to you really. Mm-hmm. But I look back and say, my God, I've accumulated a lot. I've done a lot. And it kind of made me kind of view my experiences a little bit differently. Maybe Hubert's done the same thing in the last few years.
Yeah.
Maybe in private conversations with Roy. And one of the reasons he took the JV job was to begin the process of visualizing himself as a head coach someday. Mm-hmm. Because his experiences are significant. And there's who else on the planet has had these close associations for an extended period of time. I'm going to repeat it again. Dean Smith, Pat Riley, Don Nelson, Larry Brown, Roy Williams, and he was a damn good player. Mm-hmm. He's got the whole package.
Mm-hmm.
He's an unbelievable human being. He checks every box, like I've said a couple of times. There's one thing missing. Well, now he's going to have that.
Mm-hmm.
We've elected presidents in the past that had far less experience.
That's a great point.
Guess what? The day you're sworn in, you've got experience because
Exactly.
you're on the job, and that's what it is. They play Hail to the Chief every time you enter a room.
Mm-hmm.
Hubert comes out of the tunnel, he's going to hear the Carolina band playing because we will be back to fairly normal, maybe total normalcy by the time next basketball season starts. So he'll have experience, and he may have Steve Robinson along his side. He may have some of these other guys there. And guess what? Old Roy isn't going anywhere. He's going to be going to live over where he lives. He's going to be around. He's going to be a phone call away. They're going to help him along. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say it's a great hire. I'm not going to say it's a bad hire. I'm going to say this is an understandable hire. Makes a lot of sense. They looked outside, and that confirmed to them what they thought that they had inside. And sometimes you do hire from within, and it's the right move. A lot of great programs have hired from within, and it works.
Kind of reminds me of I'm going to ask you a question here in a second, but it kind of reminds me of the Juwan Howard hire in Michigan. I know Juwan was an assistant at Michigan. He was an assistant for the Miami Heat for about 6 or 7 seasons. But, I mean, that's worked out well for them. It was a guy that didn't have head coaching experience, very limited assistant head coaching experience as well, but was a good player, kind of a legend at Michigan. Really does remind me of that. Like I said, Juwan's been pretty in the 2 seasons he's been there. I think it's been 2 seasons. He's been good. He's kept that program good. He's got Michigan winning games. So, in that respect, that's kind of when I heard Davis was hired, that's kind of the first thing I thought of just in terms of limited coaching experience, only been an assistant, but major connections to the program that he's at. Juwan Howard, also the guy that's played with a lot of legendary players. I'm sure has played under a lot of legendary coaches as well. So some similarities there. I want to ask you, what'd you say? Yeah, like Hubert.
I think Juwan Howard, I watched Michigan, they're a well-coached team. So
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of examples out there. Mm-hmm. But the more I dug into this, and I started a couple of days ago, and Dina will tell you, and I when I went on Jacob, I didn't leave that. Other than going to the press conference, I didn't leave my house. I didn't leave my front door.
I can imagine.
Yesterday, I finally took the dog for a walk. Dog came in my office clamoring for a walk for 2 days. I'm like, hey. I finally took him for a walk. I finally went on one of my walks yesterday, did my 6 miles, and I was on the phone, and I told 2 people, I went over the litany that I went over with you here in this podcast that I put in the column. You've got to see this on a different level. It's not comparable to a lot of other situations because who is walking around on this planet that has all of those associations as a player? And now
that's a good point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
So Bubba did due diligence. I know he told us that he basically almost said you got to have head coaching experience. That's kind of what I read.
Yeah, that's kind of what I took out of it as well, which made me kind of go, okay, what changed?
But just like anything, he was beginning that process then. Mm-hmm. And as I noted in my column, when he starts going down the history here, like, holy crap.
Yeah.
You got to know something. Some of that's got to rub off, especially on a really smart guy like Hubert. So,
yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
And he had the blessing of Roy. And it's not just, son, you're ready. It's like, sir, you're ready, because Hubert's 50. Mm-hmm. He's got a lifetime of experiences that he can channel into this, and he's going to get help around there. He's the head coach, man. I think a lot of people are going to question this because of not having head coaching experience. I get the whole Wes Miller thing. I had pretty good sources tell me the last couple of years that Wes was sort of the plan, but they didn't think the plan would put into action in 2021 because people wanted to see him build and sustain a program, and he's been doing that at Greensboro. Mm-hmm. But maybe they thought this was the time. Maybe the thinking is, well, you know what? If it doesn't work out here, Wes is only 38. It's not like he's going away. Not like he's going to change professions. I don't know. I haven't talked to Bubba. We haven't heard what Bubba has to say. There's still a lot of vacancies of information here that we must uncover. It's been crazy trying to get things properly confirmed and hearing some of the stuff that some people were saying and some people were putting out there that was about as far from reality as you could imagine. So we'll find out. We'll find out what he says. And I bet you he's going to talk about a lot of the stuff that I wrote about and I've talked about here in this podcast.
Guaranteed.
Because he can't avoid it, because otherwise, why do you hire him? You hire him because he's got a lifetime of experiences that blow you away, except the one missing thing. Now he's going to have that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you this before we wrap it up. and I'm asking you this because it's something we've talked about a little bit off camera, and I've seen a lot of Carolina fans saying this. Would you agree or disagree that this is one of, if not the maybe riskiest hires that Carolina could have made? I know there's a lot of, for me, his history and who he's been under and who he's learned from is fantastic. It checks a lot of boxes. But the lack of head coaching experience, I think this is what I'm seeing a lot of Carolina fans saying as well. Ticks, if there's 10 boxes, the lack of head coaching experience is maybe 5.
It's a big one.
You know what I mean? Maybe it's 5 boxes instead of 1.
And it's bigger than the other boxes.
So would you say that it was one of, if not the maybe riskiest hires that Carolina could have made? I know he'll get a lot of time because he's a Carolina guy, but just when you consider all the other things.
Well, Wes would have been a risk.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, no doubt about it.
When was the last time Wes Miller coached guys that are at the talent level in Carolina's current roster? The answer is never.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jerry Stackhouse would have been a risk. He's been a disaster at Vanderbilt the last 2 years. Part of it's not his fault, but there were some issues. I talked to some Vanderbilt people, and they said he's been a disaster. It's not me. I didn't cover it. I'm being told by people who cover Vanderbilt that it's been a disaster the last year.
Yeah, that one was always kind of.
And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just telling you what I've been told. Okay, so that would have been a risk. King Rice would have been a risk. That name's been thrown out there. We never got confirmation that he interviewed.
Yeah,
okay?
I think that was just.
So then, if you go outside the family, that would have been a risk too. It's very important to keep that family structure together because they have something nobody else has.
It's a good point. Yeah.
They have. Look, you go back to Frank McGuire, hired in 1952. Dean was on his staff for 3 years before he was elevated to head coach. When Dean left in 1998, Bill Guthridge was elevated to head coach. He was there 3 years, didn't really want to do it anymore. There's all kinds of reasons why he did do it and why he didn't do it. Then when he left, Matt Doherty, Carolina player, was on Roy's staff at Kansas for, I believe, 7 years, 1 year as a head coach at Notre Dame. He comes in from the outside. Didn't work with him. Roy comes back. And now you've got Hubert. So they've only had 5 hirings since they hired McGuire. Dean, Guthridge, Doherty, Roy, and now Hubert.
Yeah, Carolina doesn't like to switch coaches.
3 of them have been promoted within. One had 1 year of experience. The other one was Roy. And Roy came home. So I think if they would have gone outside the family, the risk of it never being, I had someone tell me the other day when I started, first I thought they were going to.
Yeah, that's kind of what we
told you guys. I thought, you know what, this could be a certain guy in the NBA, and it sure smells like that and sounds like it. But when you start thinking about it and they're in their position, there's a risk to breaking up the family. There's a risk to bringing someone in that suddenly the summer, when the guys come back, is not the same. Suddenly when former players come back and they walk the halls of the Smith Center and the office is right there, you know where they are. It's where we enter when we go for press conferences and stuff like that. Suddenly it's not the same. The guy from the outside brings in people from the outside. And you just don't have the same mojo. You don't have the same family feel. There's not the same Carolina way thing going on there. And I'm not a big fan of the term Carolina way, but they sell it and they live it and they breathe it.
Oh yeah.
So there was going to be a risk no matter what, because there was no Roy Williams out there.
Yeah, it wasn't 2003. Far from it.
So if it's going to be a risk, you look to the guy who's been on the bench the last 9 years, the guy who's been on the recruiting trail, who's gone and watched all the AAU events and has coached these kids up and has a national championship ring from 2017 and has all those other associations that he had. I don't know who was more qualified in a lot of ways. I know Wes has the head coaching experience, but he's been coaching.
It's a tough call.
Not Carolina. So
it's a tough call, yeah.
It was going to be a risk no matter what. I think they made, some people were calling it a safe hire. I think they made the hire that they believed in their hearts was the best move. And they know what is on the resumes of everybody. And this is the way they wanted to go. And I guarantee this is what Roy wanted. This is what Bubba wanted. They went that way with it. And he's now the head coach, and we'll see how he does.
Mm-hmm. Hey man, as the old saying goes, only time will tell, right? We'll see. We'll see how
Look,
things go.
we could judge it right now, and I'm not going to give it an A because he doesn't have head coaching experience. But I'm not sure I would have given anybody an A.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough.
Even that guy in the NBA up there in the Northeast, because he hadn't been in the NBA for a long time, and who's to say he would have meshed well? All of it was going to be a risk. Ideally, Roy Williams would stay 64 years old for the rest of his life, and North Carolina would have him forever, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't going to happen.
Nah.
It was time. Roy knew it was time. It was time for him. I'm glad he did it on his own terms, and walked out when he did. And now the program has to deal with it. And I think they probably made about as good a hire as they can, all things considered.
Definitely good stuff, AJ. Good stuff. I think it's a good place to end it. And we just got word a little bit ago that Hubert Davis's introductory press conference will be on Tuesday, April 6th in Chapel Hill. So make sure you keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com and our YouTube channel here for all the coverage of that and everything leading up to it and going after it in terms of Hubert Davis being the next head coach at the University of North Carolina. Big day, AJ, historical day in a lot of ways. First African-American coach as well, head basketball coach at the University of North Carolina. So pretty cool thing with that as well. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, absolutely.
So
it's exciting. I'm glad the search is over because
I bet you are, man.
4 days and I haven't shaven.
Hey, you need to go on a nice walk, man. That's what you need to do.
I'm glad you guys don't see the shoes and shorts I'm wearing right now. My wife's gonna look at me and go, "Oh God!"
Hey, at least you can leave the house now, right?
Please hire somebody.
Exactly, man. But like I said, guys, keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com for all your coverage of North Carolina football, basketball, and recruiting. And as always, guys, let's do this. If you think Hubert Davis is a good hire, if you're excited to see what he can do as the next basketball coach at North Carolina, give this video a thumbs up. And as always, share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.